The Lassie Talks podcast.
Hi, I'm Yvonne.
And I'm Robert.
And welcome to Lassie Talks podcast, where we talk about how to build a better bond with your dog. And this time we're going to talk about meet and greet, but this time it's meet and greet at home.
At home, indeed. And I'll give a little health tip and a little health talk at the end. And I'm going to talk about a body condition.
Okay, well, we are probably now thinking that we might be able to have visitors once lockdown is lifted. And we've got to think about how our dogs might react to having a visitor. Now, especially if you've had a lockdown puppy, they're not used to people coming to the door because we're not allowed to have anybody coming to the door. So I'm going to think about how to prepare a dog for this. Now, what do we think we can do to prepare our dog? Right, okay. We might get a knock at the door, mightn't we?
Yeah, doorbell ringing.
Yeah.
Big queue for lots of barking and kerfuffle.
Yeah, especially as they're not used to people coming to the door. Okay, and also what else happens when you get people just walking in? It's mayhem sometimes, isn't it?
Can be, depends on the dog. But if you've got a biggish dog, it can be quite intimidating to someone coming up. If your dog is unruly and jumping up, well, how can you prevent these things happening?
Right. Okay. Well, is preparing people to actually that are coming to your house to help you train your dog. And I do say to people, I haven't had many visitors, and let's use this opportunity to train my dogs. As you know, lived with me for more than 40 years now, but you know me, don't you? I'm a bit I'm a bit of a control freak.
You are, yes.
But it's good, in a good way.
Of course.
Yeah, and I like my dogs to be controlled when, somebody comes knocking on the door.
You don't want an unruly, in our case, an unruly Leonberger throwing herself at somebody coming in the door.
So I want them, and this, this gets to visitors. Oh, I love dogs. Don't mind,
always in that pitch of voice, which is very exciting to dogs.
Excited.
Let's have a party.
Yeah, and also I say, yeah, but I mind, and you're just training my dog to be naughty.
Yeah, and they will mind if they've turned up perhaps in some nice clothes that they don't want muddy paw prints if our dogs have just walked in from a long muddy walk.
Yeah, and if they've a lady with tights on, the last thing they want is the dew claw, which always happens, catching in the tights, and they've got a ladder.
Yeah, indeed.
And they've come in their best dress because they've come in for a meal.
I do remember that episode once when we had our border collie Fred as a puppy, and we'd taken him out. It was outside, admittedly, but we'd gone for a walk, and he had found a lovely patch of cow muck, which he had rolled in, and he was dripping with it. And then this very well-dressed gentleman was walking along the path, and Fred was about to throw himself with dog at the man and his white shirt and his smart suit and everything else.
Good job we had a
cowpat.
Yeah.
Fortunately, your recall was good.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the same when somebody comes to your door. You don't want them leaping all over your guests. And I have this protocol where they go to the bed. The knock on the door means they instantly, or should, it's a work in progress because, they've not had many visitors recently and they've got out of practice. And what I call, or what is called in spontaneous recovery, saying that, we have on cue. There we are. We've just had a delivery.
Oh, there's the dog's barking.
Yeah.
A delivery.
And now I'm going to show you, Robert, carry on talking.
Carry on talking.
And you tell them what I'm going to do with, you could write this, could you? The doormat.
You go and do it. They're barking their heads off. So we call them away. So Yvonne's now getting a nice treat, and already the dogs know what's going to happen. So at this point, the dogs have become quiet and calm. We've acknowledged that they've acknowledged that someone's arrived, and Yvonne is now putting them up onto their beds,
Right.
whilst
Fred?
the man is waiting at the door, very conveniently. So the dogs are being asked to pop up on their pop-up beds, which is where they're doing.
We're just getting them in.
Yep, and so.
Yeah, and he's just put it on the.
Yep, the delivery man has done just what we wanted, left the parcel, and we're all getting a lot of deliveries these days. So there we are, work in progress, as Yvonne says, but all the dogs are now calm.
The cue of the knocking on the door. Okay.
So the queue was knocking on the door, and they responded, but within moments they were calm.
Right, and now I'm going to release them from their beds.
The delivery has happened. He's gone. So now we release them one by one, all rewarded with a small treat, and we're back to calmness. So we weren't expecting that on this podcast. We don't know how this is going to look and sound, but you've probably heard the barking going off in the background, and it'll be interesting to see what people think of on this.
Yeah, I mean, this is real life, isn't it? And this is really what you have to deal with in real life. I've released them off their beds, and Joy, bless her, because I've left the back door open by mistake, it's real life. She's gone off now just to tell the delivery man that...
Time to clear off.
Yes, time to clear off altogether. Now, if she doesn't quieten down, I will go and get her in. But, generally, she's done her job. That's what dogs do. They react to noise, and they actually, I'm out of breath with all that excitement. They actually, tell us that there's something to take notice of. And the more that you actually take notice of, the less the dog is going to bark. You're not going to get persistent barking if you acknowledge, to the dog that actually, you've taken notice of what's happened, and then they quieten down much quicker.
They feel they've done their job.
Yeah, and actually, I acknowledged the man. He stepped in, which surprised me, and put the dog food, I think it is actually.
Yeah, it is a parcel of dog food.
Actually, in the house, and and they didn't attack him, which is good, and they didn't rush up and jump on him, which is good. And Joy's coming to tell me all about it. Well done, girl. You see, if you actually acknowledge that there are visitors, you're going to get less barking. You get them to go to their beds. They quieten down very quickly. Then you can release them from the beds, but don't leave the back door open like I did, because then they go make sure that the van is driven off. But dogs feel it's their duty to keep you safe.
Yeah, and of course, when you've got a big heap of big dogs like we have, it can sound enormous going on, but they're under control, and they're doing as they should do, and we are happy that you have them well trained enough to get them to just pop up on their beds, and
I mean, you can do
everything's
this.
over and done with.
Yeah.
And would we do this if the person was coming in as a guest?
Yes, exactly. I mean, they would pop up on their beds, and then you would welcome the person in, and then, release the dogs to say hello. But you ask the guests, you give them a bunch of treats where they can throw the food, especially with a new puppy, throw the food out onto the floor so they don't leap up.
So you're discouraging the dog trying to gain height to get in the face of the of the
If it's
guest.
a very springy, puppy, I suggest to the guest that they just throw the food out.
So it's a good idea to practice this with a guest that is, happy with dogs and happy
Absolutely,
to do doggy things,
yeah.
rather than someone who has a bit of a dog phobia, and you've
Oh,
got a friend with a bit of a dog phobia,
yes.
that will not be the person to try
Yes.
with.
Well,
But you've
I've
got lots
cured
of
her.
friends with.
I've cured her.
You have, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she's. I mean, she was very phobic, especially if, the bigger dogs, which is funny really, because actually the bigger one is the slower and the soppier one, where the collies, as you know, would be quite jumpy if she did, or because he worked music with both of my dogs, and she, by screaming and holding her hands up
In horror.
she was actually doing the cue that I did for jumping up. And that's another thing. You can actually teach your dogs to jump up on cue. And if there's only on cue, they're less likely to jump up, because you haven't given the cue.
Yes, or you can redirect their jumping up tendency, if you like, onto an object that you want them to. In this case, you encourage them to jump up onto their beds,
Yeah.
which are slightly raised.
Yeah.
But it could be anything. You could have a chair or something that they could, even if they're only putting their front paws on,
Yeah.
which is a trick which you've taught, but you've put it
Or
under a
beds,
cue.
a dog's bed,
dog's
send
bed is
send them
the
to the
easiest.
dog bed. I quite like the dog beds that have got sort of like walls, so there's a definite barrier. Because the problem with dogs, if the dog bed is flat, they sort of creep and try and creep out. So as I say, enjoy your dog, but remember, good boundaries are the key.
Yeah.
So you want them not to creep. Now, pen, pop up. Yes, and don't forget, after something exciting like that, they get all zoomed up. So we have to reintroduce the relaxation regime that we talked about on an earlier podcast.
So they've got excited, and now we want them to become calm again.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is transitioning from very zoomed up and excited back down to calm.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to establish with our dogs before we start having our guests round, and we practice that. We can, bang on the door ourselves and then have them all rush.
Or ring the doorbell.
We don't have a doorbell here.
We don't. We have 3 big dogs that bark and let us know.
and they
We
let
don't
us
need a
know.
doorbell.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah, someone knocking on the door, it can be set up and it can be controlled until it becomes a training thing that the dog will do normally, naturally.
Yeah, it just becomes reflex then for them, that when the knock on the door happens or the doorbell goes, that they all pop on their beds. That becomes the cue to pop on the beds. But we're still a work in progress.
I think that's something to stress, that whenever you're training your dog, you don't train it and then forget it. You continue to reinforce that training so that it remains part and parcel of what goes on.
Yeah.
And you must make your own household rules. So when a guest comes, the guest is allowed in. Maybe you don't allow the dogs to immediately greet. You keep them back. And then when your guest is suitably seated and calm, then the dogs can be
and that's
introduced. And it may be just
how I
you
help
have
my
one
friend.
dog,
Yeah.
but you may have a whole heap of dogs. So you may want to do it one at a time.
Yeah, that's how I helped my friend. I hadn't realised how phobic she was until she screamed. She never told me that that she had a dog phobia. So I used to then keep the dogs actually in their dog crate, and she'd come in and settle down. And I said, well, I can leave them in the crates if you like. And she said, oh, no, it's all right. I'm here all morning. That'd be unfair to. And she would, wanted to get over her fear as well. So we'd let one out at a time, and, she got used to it, and she started to relax. And
yeah, so we trained her.
Yes, it is. It's helping. It's always thinking about helping the human being as well as the dog. We've always got to see the other side of the equation. to our relationships and building better bonds
Yeah,
with
so
our
often
dogs.
we've talked about, the emotion of the dog, but we've also got to talk about our own emotions and how the two interact.
Yeah, and then of course, I felt for my friend who was fearful of dogs, and then that would then relay to my dogs that I was worried for her, and there's having to say, right, take a deep breath, relax.
Sing Nelly the elephant.
Sing Nelly the elephant. And in fact, perhaps I'd actually choose in this instant a more of a calming ballad rather than Nelly the elephant. Much calmer rather than
calm vibes.
Yeah, because when you're out and about,
smooth radio.
Yeah, when you're out and about, you want your dog to be jolly and trotting along and moving forward. But when you're in the house, the song should be something calmer and, as you say,
calming to you, calming to the dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've tested little mice that have with sound and actually shown that when there's jazzy music, and how they react to it. And it's quite interesting, our neuro pathways do pick up these sounds, and it does affect our mood, which is, so some nice, music in the background, calming music.
So if you're calm, your dogs are likely to be calm.
Yeah.
If your dogs are calm, you're likely to be calm.
Yeah,
I think that's a very good tip to pass through.
Yeah, and as you can see now, all three dogs now, well, you put not all of them in camera shot,
but
but
they are
I've got
dotted about now.
Fred there, down there on my left-hand side. Penny's popped up on her bed, and Joy's out in the hall. I think she's asleep now. Yep. We had all
the
that excitement has gone.
All passed, and they are now back into
we're
calm,
all calm
which
again.
is what we wanted to do.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we're feeding them a lot with this training.
Yes. That brings me on perhaps to my health tip. A lot of people are saying, but you're giving so many treats out. As Yvonne has said, perhaps on previous podcasts, that their daily ration is divided up into what they get fed at meal time, so to speak, and the bulk of it, maybe over 50%, 60% of the food that they get during the day is given in the form of the treats and the training treats at the points that we're doing training, whether that's a bit of formal training that Yvonne might be doing, or whether it's just training for behaviours that we want in the house, as we've just demonstrated with the meet and greet at the door. Now, what you have to watch with whatever diet and treats you're giving is that the dogs are fed to their bodily condition. A lot of people ask, how much do I feed a dog? Well, that depends. Of course, it depends just as much as it does with people. If you've got a very active dog and you're going for very long walks and they're active all day, they're going to need more calories than a dog that spends much of its time quietly asleep on the sofa. And so
how can you tell if it's got good body condition?
Right. Now, body condition has been formalised into what's called body condition scoring. There are a number of systems. Some work on a sort of a 1 to 5, and some 1 to 10, or other combinations. But basically, it is looking at the condition of the dog. So you would be looking at the muscle versus fat that you can not only see but feel on the dog. So you may be wanting to run your hands along the side of the dog.
When you're grooming?
When you're grooming, for instance, yes, good opportunity. Perhaps, on your regular grooming, you're just making a mental note of whether your dog's ribs are feelable. You don't want to be seeing them, but you want him to be able to feel them. And if you can't feel them, that might be because there's a layer of fat there.
They're getting a bit podgy.
Indeed. And you need to look at their profile. If their stomach is all bulging out, as we know, that's usually an indication that fat has accumulated. The same applies to dogs. So their profile, when you look at them from the side, from behind the ribs, should tuck up, but not so much that, you can not see anything there at all. So body condition scoring goes from sort of number 1, which is a very emaciated, very thin, skin and bone, the sort of picture you see on RSPCA
Oh,
and
it's
Dog
horrible to
Rescue,
see,
where dogs have had poor nutrition for a long period of time, all the way through to, and we've all talked about the fat Labrador, but it doesn't have to be Labradors. It's often, small dogs as well, where they are just a round ball of fat.
Yeah.
And
that's
both
bad
ends
for...
are obviously very unhealthy. So one's aiming for, certainly a young adult dog needs to be at the leaner end. I do allow a little bit of thickening up as they go into middle and old age. But what we don't want is a fat dog because of all the health issues.
like with us humans.
Absolutely. It all applies the same.
Yeah.
So you can look on the web and you will find various systems of scoring. They'll have little pictures demonstrating what the dog looks like, but it's mainly getting your hands on to feel your dog's condition. Now, if you find your dog is going a little bit fat, that's a cue to you to mentally start to reduce the amount of food you're giving over the day.
Yeah.
If they're on the thin side, that usually means you've got to up the quantity of food, but also perhaps the quality of food, because dog foods do vary in quality, and it's not always governed by price. There are some very good, inexpensive dog foods. There is a whole science on it. I'm not going to try and do into that on this podcast, but there are many resources out there for getting.
And we'll probably post some on our website.
Yeah, we might pop some links on and things like that.
Yeah,
Good.
to help people.
Hope that's helped.
I used to love how you used to say to owners that when we used to do the puppy classes, that if you look above the dog, it looked like a shape of an hourglass.
Yeah, there should be a waist.
Yeah, there should be a waist.
Behind the ribs, it should just tuck in a little. Not too much.
Yeah. So you're looking on the top of the dog and running your hands along.
But if you have a dog with a heavy coat, you sometimes
can't see.
See. So that's why I say get your hands on.
Yeah, because Penny looks a bit.
Penny's got a fluffy coat, particularly at this time of the year.
Yeah,
and she can look a little bit more portly than she really is.
Yeah, I'm getting missed notifications, and I think at that point, we'll, bring the podcast to.
And as you say, where can you get further information on what we've talked about today?
Yeah, www.lassietalks.com, and of course, we'll be talking about loads more about how to keep your dog in good condition in further podcasts, and of course, we're on Facebook. So see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Lassie Talks. If you would like to get in touch or have any questions, then please visit lassietalks.com or visit our Facebook and YouTube page. Every dog has a Lassie's heart. So remember, we need to make our homes the best place for our dogs to be. See you soon at the next episode of Lassie Talks. Lassie Talks was recorded and produced at Monkey Nut Audiobooks.